In the neon-lit streets of Puerto Vallarta, 5 cartel members were about to make the deadliest mistake of their lives. They couldn't have known that the quiet American bartender carefully preparing craft cocktails had orchestrated more successful black operations than their entire organization combined, or that their threats would awaken a ghost the intelligence community had presumed dead for nearly a decade. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The evening air hung thick with humidity at the Blue Agave, a trendy beachfront bar where Mike Sullivan had spent the last 8 years building a new life. His weathered hands moved with practiced precision as he crafted another perfect margarita, each movement calculated and smooth, the same efficiency he'd once applied to planning covert operations across 3 continents. The bar's modern, industrial design, with its exposed steel beams and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific, attracted an upscale crowd of tourists and expatriates. Mike had chosen it carefully, knowing the legitimate business traffic would help mask any unwanted attention. The strategic sight lines and multiple exit points were just happy coincidences, or so he told himself. Isabella Martinez, his bar manager and closest friend in this coastal paradise, watched him from the service station where she was updating the evening's inventory. After 8 years, she'd learned to read the subtle shifts in his demeanor that others missed. Tonight, something was off. "You're doing that thing again," she said quietly, stepping closer to the bar. Mike's hands never stopped their fluid motion as he prepared another round of drinks. "What thing?" "That thing where you notice everything but pretend not to." She nodded toward the security feeds hidden beneath the bar, screens showing every angle of the establishment. "You've checked the cameras 6 times in the last hour." He allowed himself a small smile. Isabella had always been too perceptive for her own good. It was one of the reasons he'd hired her, that and her uncanny ability to spot trouble before it started. "Force of habit," he replied, but his eyes flickered briefly to the entrance where a black Escalade had been parked for the past 45 minutes. The evening news played silently on the bar's mounted TVs, showing footage of recent cartel violence. In the region, the Ortiz organization had been expanding aggressively, pushing into territories previously controlled by smaller groups. Mike had watched the pattern with growing concern, recognizing the tactical signatures of professional military training. "Mr. Sullivan," Dr. James Chen called from his usual spot at the end of the bar. The expatriate surgeon had been coming to the Blue Agave since it opened, one of the few people who seemed to sense there was more to the American bartender than met the eye. "You saw the news about that firefight in Sinaloa. Military precision, they're saying." Mike set a fresh gin and tonic in front of the doctor. "Cartel violence is bad for business," he said neutrally, but his mind was already analyzing the footage, recognizing the telltale signs of advanced small unit tactics. The bar's evening crowd was starting to build, the usual mix of tourists, business people and locals. Mike noted each new arrival with practiced ease, categorizing potential threats and exits. Captain Maria Vargas, one of his regular customers from the local police force, caught his eye as she entered. The slight shake of her head confirmed what he'd suspected. Something was brewing in the underworld. Isabella's phone buzzed with a news alert. "Another kidnapping," she reported quietly. "American executive taken right from his hotel." She hesitated before adding, "Third one this month." Mike's hands stilled momentarily on the glass he was polishing. The pattern was clear now, professional operations disguised as ordinary cartel violence. Someone was building something bigger, something that required both military expertise and extensive intelligence. The sunset painted the ocean in shades of blood and gold, casting long shadows through the bar's windows. Mike watched as two more black SUVs joined the escalade outside, their windows tinted well beyond legal limits. The occupants remained inside, engines running. "Might want to check our inventory in the back," he said quietly to Isabella. She recognized the code phrase immediately, moving casually toward the office where he kept a secure satellite phone and an encrypted laptop. Some habits were too ingrained to break, even after 8 years of peace. The bar's ambient music couldn't quite mask the sound of heavy boots on the deck outside. Mike counted the footsteps, 6 sets, moving with the coordinated precision of men used to working as a unit. Through the windows, he saw Captain Vargas casually relocate to a better tactical position, her hand near her concealed weapon. Dr. Chen set down his drink, his posture shifting subtly. "Expecting trouble, Mr. Sullivan?" "Always," Mike replied, softly, remembering the lessons that had kept him alive through 2 decades of black operations. "It's the unexpected you have to worry about." The door opened, and 5 men entered with the calculated casualness of predators sizing up their territory. Their leader, dressed in an expensive white linen suit that didn't quite hide the bulge of a shoulder holster, moved directly to the bar. The others spread out, taking positions that covered every exit. 8 years, Mike thought as he watched. Their reflection in the mirror behind the bar. 8 years of carefully maintained peace were about to end, all because someone couldn't leave the past buried where it belonged. "Cartel," the man in white said, his smile never reaching his eyes. "I hear you make the best margaritas in Puerto Vallarta." Mike met his gaze steadily, noting the tactical earpiece, the calloused trigger finger, the way he kept his right side angled slightly away, all markers of professional training. "Welcome to the Blue Agave," he replied, his voice carrying none of the recognition he felt. "What's your pleasure?" The man's smile widened fractionally. "Oh, I think you know exactly what I'm here for, Commander." And in that moment, as the last rays of sunlight painted shadows across the bar, Michael Sullivan realized his carefully constructed peace was about to shatter. 8 years of normalcy, of craft cocktails and tourist stories, were about to give way to something darker. The only question was, how many people would get caught in the crossfire when the ghost of who he used to be finally rose from the grave? The silence that followed seemed to stretch like piano wire, taut with unspoken tension. Mike continued polishing, the glass in his hands, each movement deliberate and unhurried, but his mind was already mapping angles and distances, cataloguing potential weapons and escape routes. "I think you have me confused with someone else," he said quietly, setting the glass down with precision. "I'm just a bartender." The man in white, Miguel Ortiz, Mike's mind supplied from intelligence briefings he wasn't supposed to have seen, laughed softly. "Just a bartender, like my brother was just a soldier." His smile turned predatory. "Before you recruited him for Operation Kingfisher." The name hit Mike like a physical blow, though his expression remained carefully neutral. Behind him, the TV news shifted to footage of a recent cartel massacre. The reporter's voice muted, but the images clear enough. professional work disguised as random violence. "Your drinks, senor." Mike's voice remained steady, years of training holding firm. Ortiz's men had positioned themselves strategically, one by the main entrance, another covering the beachfront doors, two more flanking the bar itself. The fifth man, slightly apart from the others, carried himself differently, military-bearing, Mike noted, probably their tactical advisor. "You know what's interesting about bartenders?" Ortiz leaned forward, his expensive cologne barely masking, a deeper scent of gunpowder and danger. "They hear everything, see everything, like that business last month with the American executives. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us." Now back to the story. Dr. Chen shifted slightly at his seat, hand casually dropping below the bar. Mike gave him an imperceptible shake of the head. "Not yet." "Tourist town," Mike replied, starting to mix a margarita without being asked. "People talk." "People do talk," Ortiz agreed, watching Mike's hands move with professional appreciation. "Especially after enough tequila. Sometimes they talk about strange things, like a ghost program that officially never existed, or a commander who died in Afghanistan 8 years ago." Isabella had positioned herself near the office door, her posture casual, but her eyes alert. Through the windows, Mike could see Captain Vargas speaking quietly into her radio, her backup arriving with careful subtlety. "The thing about ghosts," Ortiz continued, "is that they leave traces, little signs that something isn't quite right." He gestured around the bar, like a bartender who installs military-grade security systems, or a beach bar with better sight lines than a forward operating base. Mike set the finished margarita in front of Ortiz, the salt rim pristine. "Dangerous neighborhood." "Very dangerous," Ortiz agreed, making no move to touch the drink. "Getting more dangerous every day. Someone's been interfering with our operations, and their tactical data leaked to federales, shipment routes compromised, safe houses burned." The military advisor shifted his weight slightly, hand moving toward his concealed weapon. Mike noted the movement without appearing to, his own muscles coiling with practiced readiness. "Maybe you need better operational security," Mike suggested, mildly starting another drink. Ortiz's laugh held no humor. "That's exactly what my new friend here said." He nodded toward the military advisor, Colonel James Wright, formerly of U.S. Special Forces. Now he works for me, helping to solve security problems. The name triggered another cascade of memories. Wright had been one of his best operators before disappearing 3 years ago, reportedly killed in action. His presence here complicated things significantly. "And how's that working out?" Mike asked, his tone conversational as he studied Wright's reflection in the bar mirror. The man's expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes, a warning perhaps, or a plea. "Not as well as hoped," Ortiz admitted. "Someone keeps staying one step ahead, someone with very particular skills." His smile turned cruel. "Someone who might have learned those skills from a certain commander who specialized in ghost operations." Outside, more black SUVs had arrived, their occupants remaining inside with engines running. Mike's mind calculated odds and angles, factoring in civilian casualties, structural weak points, and available resources. "Like I said," Mike replied, his voice carrying a weight that made even Ortiz's men shift uneasily, "I'm just a bartender. A bartender who installed specialized UV lights that only activate under certain conditions." Wright spoke for the first time, his voice carrying a complex mixture of emotions. A bartender who repositioned every mirror in this place to maximize observable angles. Mike's eyes met Wright's in the bar mirror. Decorating is a hobby. Like the reinforced support columns, Wright pressed. The redundant power systems. The specialized glass in the windows. Building codes in hurricane country, Mike replied smoothly. You can never be too careful. Ortiz's smile widened. No, Commander Sullivan, you certainly can't. He reached into his jacket, producing not a weapon but a photograph. Which is why I brought insurance. The image showed a teenage girl outside an expensive private school in Virginia. Mike's hand stilled on the glass he was polishing, the only outward sign of recognition. Emily Wright, Ortiz said softly. Your goddaughter, isn't she, Commander? Colonel Wright has been very helpful in providing such details. Wright's face remained impassive, but his eyes held a desperate apology. Mike understood immediately. They had leverage on both of them, using Wright's daughter to control him, and now trying to use her to control Mike as well. Beautiful campus, Ortiz continued. Very exclusive, very secure. But nowhere is completely secure, is it, Commander? Not from men with our particular skill sets. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Mike's mind raced through scenarios, calculating possibilities and consequences. Emily was innocent, caught in a web of violence and revenge she didn't even know existed. What do you want? Mike asked quietly, though he already knew. Your expertise, Ortiz replied. Someone is dismantling my organization piece by piece, using techniques that seem familiar. I want to know who, and I want them stopped. And if I refuse? Ortiz's smile turned predatory. Then Colonel Wright's next assignment will be considerably more personal. The implications were clear. Wright had been forced to work for the cartel to protect his daughter, and now they wanted to use the same leverage against Mike. But they had made one crucial mistake. They assumed he had spent the last 8 years hiding. You know what your brother's last words were? Mike asked softly, his voice carrying a weight that made even Ortiz's smile falter. The cartel leader's eyes narrowed. You dare! He said, make it mean something, Mike continued, his hands moving with deliberate precision as he arranged bottles on the bar. Right before he died trying to expose your organization's connection to terrorist cells. Ortiz's face darkened with rage. You son of a... I've spent 8 years making it mean something. Mike cut him off. 8 years gathering intelligence, building networks, preparing for exactly this moment. Understanding began to dawn in Ortiz's eyes, but it was too late. Mike's hands moved to the specific pattern of bottles he had arranged, a code that Isabella recognized immediately. She pressed a hidden button in the office doorway, and suddenly the bar's normal lights cut out, replaced by ultraviolet illumination that revealed invisible markings throughout the room. Sight lines, kill zones, and defensive positions mapped out in luminescent paint. You're not the first ghost to walk into my bar, Mike said quietly, as his carefully laid plans began to unfold. But you might be the last. The night was about to remind everyone why some legends are better left undisturbed, and why some ghosts never truly rest. The only question was, how many more lives would be caught in the crossfire before peace could be restored to this corner of paradise? The UV lights transformed the Blue Agave into an otherworldly battleground, casting everything in ethereal purple hues that revealed Mike's years of careful preparation. The luminescent markings showed more than just tactical positions. They revealed escape routes, weapon caches, and defensive strongpoints integrated seamlessly into the bar's design. "Impressive setup," Wright commented professionally, his military training allowing him to appreciate the sophistication of the preparations. "But you're still outnumbered." "Numbers aren't everything, Colonel," Mike replied, his hands moving beneath the bar. "You taught me that, remember, back in Kandahar." The memory flickered across Wright's face. A midnight operation where 2 operators had outmaneuvered an entire Taliban unit. Before he could respond, Mike's fingers found what they were seeking: a small, remote control. "Isabella," Mike called out calmly. "Initiate Protocol Nightshade." She pressed another sequence of buttons, and suddenly the bar's premium liquor bottles began releasing a fine mist into the air. The UV light caught the particles, creating a purple haze that seemed to dance with malevolent beauty. "Aerosolized CS gas," Mike explained, as Ortiz's men began to realize something was wrong. "Mixed with a proprietary compound developed by Dr. Chen here, non-lethal but highly effective." Dr. Chen smiled grimly, pulling a compact rebreather from beneath his jacket. "The benefits of having a chemical engineer as a regular customer." The cartel soldiers reached for their weapons, but the mist was already taking effect, causing disorientation and confusion. Mike had spent years building tolerance to his own chemical cocktails, and his regular customers had been quietly supplied with countermeasures. "You think this changes anything?" Ortiz snarled, pulling a handkerchief over his face. "My men outside are dealing with their own problems," Captain Vargas interrupted, stepping forward with her weapon drawn. Her backup teams had already secured the perimeter using Mike's predetermined containment protocols. But Ortiz wasn't finished. He pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over a preset number. "One call, and Emily Wright's security detail gets replaced by my people. Are you willing to take that chance, Commander?" Mike's voice carried deadly certainty. "Emily left that school 3 months ago. She's been in protective custody ever since I learned about your operation." The revelation hit Wright like a physical blow. "You knew all this time?" "I never stopped watching out for her, James," Mike replied softly, "just like I never stopped trying to make your brother's sacrifice mean something." Understanding dawned in Wright's eyes as the full scope of Mike's operation became clear. The intelligence leaks, the compromised shipments. "It was all you?" "Not just me," Mike corrected. "A network of people who still believe in justice. People your brother died trying to protect." Ortiz's composure cracked slightly. "You're lying. Our sources confirm the girl—" "Your sources have been compromised for months," Isabella interrupted, holding up her satellite phone, "just like your communications, your safe houses, and your banking networks." The cartel leader's face contorted with rage. Kill them all." But in the purple haze of the UV lights, as the chemical mist swirled like spirits awakened from slumber, Mike Sullivan showed exactly why he had been the most feared ghost operator in 3 theaters of war. His first movement was almost too fast to follow, disarming the nearest cartel soldier with a precise joint lock that left the man gasping on the floor. The second attacker managed to draw his weapon, but found himself flying through the air, his shot going wide as Mike used the bar's architecture against him. Wright made his choice in that moment, turning on Ortiz's remaining men with the deadly efficiency that had once made him one of Mike's best operators. Together, they moved. Like a well-oiled machine, muscle memory from countless shared missions taking over. Federal police, nobody move. Captain Vargas's voice boomed through the chaos as her tactical team breached from multiple entry points, their timing coordinated perfectly with Mike's defense. But Ortiz had one last card to play. As his men fell around him, he pulled out a detonator, his thumb hovering over the trigger. "You think I came unprepared? This whole block is wired. One push and nothing happens," Dr. Chen interrupted calmly, holding up a signal jammer, except perhaps a very expensive violation of FCC regulations. The cartel leader's face went through a rapid series of emotions: rage, disbelief, and finally a terrible kind of understanding. "You haven't been hiding at all, have you?" he whispered. "This whole time." "This whole time," Mike confirmed, "I've been building something your brother died trying to protect. A network of people who still believe in justice, in doing what's right no matter the cost." Through the dissipating chemical mist, as federal agents secured the scene, Mike turned to write. "James, your brother once told me that the hardest part of our job wasn't the fighting or the danger. It was remembering why we started, remembering what we're really fighting for." Wright nodded slowly, years of forced service to the cartel falling away like chains. "Family," he said softly. "Justice, the things worth dying for." "The things worth living for," Mike corrected. "That's what your brother understood. That's what I've spent 8 years building here. Not just a bar, but a symbol. A place where people can find hope, find purpose, find their way back to who they really are." As the federal agents led Ortiz away in handcuffs, Mike surveyed his bar. The UV lights still cast their ethereal glow, but now they revealed something. More than just tactical positions, they showed the strength of preparation, the power of patience, and the importance of never forgetting who you really are. Isabella began turning the regular lights back on, dispelling the purple haze. "Quite a mess," she observed, looking at the scattered glasses and overturned chairs. "We'll rebuild," Mike replied confidently. "Better than before. That's what this place is really about. Not just serving drinks, but serving hope, giving people a chance to find their way back to the light." Captain Vargas approached, holstering her weapon. "The block is secure. Ortiz's entire local network is being rolled up as we speak. You've done good work here, Mike." "We've done good work," he corrected. "All of us. Because that's what really beats the darkness. Not one person fighting alone, but a community standing together." As the sun began to rise over Puerto Vallarta, painting the ocean in shades of promise, the Blue Agave stood as testament to a simple truth. Sometimes the greatest victories aren't won with violence, but with patience, preparation, and the courage to stand for something bigger than yourself. Wright looked around at the bar that had been so much more than it seemed. "What now?" Mike smiled, already planning the repairs and improvements. "Now we keep building, keep serving drinks, and hope in equal measure, because there's always someone out there looking for their way back to the light." And in the growing dawn, as the last traces of combat faded away, the Blue Agave prepared to serve another kind of mission. Not one of violence and shadows, but of redemption, hope, and the enduring power of choosing to stand for something worth believing in. In the days following the confrontation, the Blue Agave underwent a transformation. While workers repaired the physical damage, Mike and his team focused on strengthening the bar's true purpose as a beacon of hope and redemption. The morning sun streamed through newly installed bulletproof windows, catching dust motes that danced in the air as Mike reviewed security footage with Wright. "These aren't just random cartel operations," Wright observed, pointing to patterns in the surveillance data. "They're using advanced military tactics, professional infiltration techniques." Mike nodded, studying the footage carefully. Ortiz was just the tip of the iceberg. Someone's been recruiting special forces operators, turning them against everything they once stood for. Isabella approached with a fresh pot of coffee and a stack of intelligence reports. 3 more former operators identified in cartel operations across Central America. All of them had families, vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Just like they tried with Emily. Wright's face darkened at the memory. How many more are out there, being forced to work against their will? Mike's fingers traced a pattern on the bar's smooth surface, following the hidden UV markings that had helped save their lives. That's why we need to expand the network. The Blue Agave can't just be one safe haven. It needs to be the first of many. Dr. Chen entered through the front door, carrying his medical bag and a thick folder. "I may have something that could help with that." He spread several documents across the bar: chemical analysis of cartel supply chains, shipping manifests, financial records, all pointing to a larger operation. Captain Vargas joined them, still in her tactical uniform. "From an early morning raid, my team just finished processing Ortiz's local headquarters, found something interesting." She placed a laptop on the bar. "Encrypted communications with someone called the Director." Mike's expression hardened. "I know that designation. Black Ops controller went off the grid 5 years ago after being investigated for selling classified intelligence." "Marcus Kane," Wright supplied, the name carrying weight. "He was my handler before everything went wrong, always. Had a talent for finding people's pressure points." Isabella's fingers flew across her keyboard, pulling up data streams. "Kane's fingerprints are all over this. The tactical precision, the psychological warfare, the way they exploit personal connections, it's all from his playbook." "Then we use that against him," Mike stated firmly. "Kane thinks he can break people by threatening what they love. We show them there's another way." The bar's new security system hummed quietly in the background as Mike outlined his vision. The Blue Agave was never just about serving drinks or providing a safe house. It's about showing people they have a choice, that there's always a path back to the light. A network of safe havens, Wright understood, each one a potential turning point for someone being forced to work for Kane. "More than that," Mike corrected. "Community centers, rehabilitation facilities, protective services for families, everything someone would need to break free from Kane's control." Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. "I have colleagues in various fields, doctors, lawyers, counselors, who would support such an initiative. And I have connections with legitimate security firms," Captain Vargas added. "People who could provide protection for families of operators wanting to break free." Isabella pulled up a map on her screen. "I've identified potential locations for our first expansion sites. Tourist areas with high cash flow, perfect for legitimate business fronts." Mike studied the map thoughtfully. "Each location will need someone we trust to run it. Someone who understands both the tactical and humanitarian aspects of what we're doing." Wright straightened, purpose returning to his stance. "I know others like me, good operators forced into bad situations, given a real choice, a real chance. They'll choose to stand with us, Mike finished, just like you did. The morning light strengthened, illuminating the bar's new features. Subtle security improvements disguised as architectural elements, emergency systems. Hidden behind elegant design, every aspect serving dual purposes of protection and inspiration. Cain will come for us, Wright warned, once he realizes what we're building. Let him come, Mike replied calmly, because every time he sends someone to stop us, we'll give them a chance to join us instead. Every threat becomes an opportunity for redemption. Isabella's computer chimed with new intelligence. Another operator identified in Guatemala, former Delta Force, family being held as leverage. Mike nodded decisively. Then that's our next mission. Not to fight, but to save. To show them there's always another choice. Dr. Chen smiled slightly. From ghost commander to bartender to... What? Leader of an underground railroad for coerced operators? Leader of a movement, Captain Vargas corrected. A reminder that it's never too late to choose a different path. The bar's new staff began arriving for training, each one carefully selected, each with their own story of redemption or purpose. Mike watched them prepare for the day, seeing not just employees but partners in a greater mission. When I started this place, he reflected, I thought I was just looking for peace, for a quiet corner to forget who I used to be. Instead, I found something better, a way to help others remember who they really are. Wright understood. Not just a safe house, but a lighthouse, a beacon showing others the way home. Home, Mike repeated softly. That's what we're really building here. Not just physical safety, but a place where people can rediscover their true selves, their real purpose. As the Blue Agave prepared to open for another day, its new mission crystallized in the morning light. Each drink served would be more than just a transaction. It would be an opportunity to spot someone in need, to offer a path to redemption, to show that even in the darkest operations there was always a way back to the light. Because some legends don't need to stay buried in the shadows. Sometimes they evolve, growing into something greater, not a story of violence and vengeance, but a tale of hope, redemption, and the endless possibility of new beginnings. And in Puerto Vallarta, as the sun climbed higher over the Pacific, the Blue Agave stood ready to serve its true purpose, not just as a bar, but as the first light of dawn for souls lost in darkness, a reminder that every end can be a new beginning, and that the greatest strength lies not in fighting alone, but in standing together for something worth believing in. The first warning came through Isabella's encrypted network at dawn. 3 more operators had gone missing from their protective assignments, leaving behind only cryptic messages about the greater good. Mike studied the reports as the morning sun cast long shadows through the Blue Agave's windows, his mind already calculating implications and contingencies. Cain's escalating, Wright observed, reviewing satellite footage on his laptop. These aren't random disappearances, they're targeted extractions. He's building something, Mike agreed, his fingers tracing patterns on the bar's polished surface. An army of ghosts, all with the same skills we have, all forced to work against everything they once believed in. Dr. Chen entered quietly, in carrying a thick medical file, Latest psychological profiles on the operators we've helped extract. There's a pattern emerging. Kane isn't just using threats anymore. He's offering something else. Purpose, Captain Vargas supplied, joining them with fresh intelligence reports. My sources say he's selling them on some kind of grand vision, a new world order built by operators who understand what really needs to be done. Isabella's computers hummed as she processed new data streams. Financial traces show massive resources being moved through shadow accounts. Whatever Kane's planning, it's bigger than just cartel operations. Mike's hand stilled on the bar top, his expression hardening as pieces fell into place. He's not building an army, he realized. He's building a revolution, using disillusioned operators to destabilize governments, create chaos he can control. Classic insurgency tactics, Wright nodded grimly, but on a global scale, using the best trained soldiers in the world. The implications hung heavy in the morning air. Each operator Kane recruited brought with them years of specialized training, classified knowledge, and the tactical skills to wage warfare at the highest level. There's more, Isabella added, her voice tense. I've decoded communications suggesting Kane has infiltrated protective services. He knows about our network, about what we're building here. Then we accelerate, Mike decided, pulling up blueprints for their expansion sites. We show his recruits there's a better way to create change, to find purpose. How do you fight an idea? Dr. Chen asked quietly. Kane's offering them a chance to reshape the world. We offer them something better, Mike replied. A chance to rebuild it, to protect what's worth saving instead of burning it all down. The bar's morning preparation routine continued around them, staff members moving with practiced efficiency, each one a former operator or intelligence agent who'd found their way back to the light. They were living proof that redemption was possible, that purpose could be found in protection rather than destruction. Latest intelligence suggests Kane's forces are massing in Colombia, Captain Vargas reported, pointing to satellite imagery. Some kind of training facility, heavily fortified. Not just training, Wright observed, studying the layouts. Look at the communication arrays, the security patterns. That's a command center. Mike's tactical mind analyzed the facility's weaknesses, but he forced himself to think bigger. We don't just hit it, he decided. We turn it, make it the first of our new facilities. Isabella looked up from her screens. You want to convert Kane's own base into a rehabilitation center? Poetic justice, Dr. Chen smiled slightly. Turn his fortress of war into a haven of peace. More than that, Mike explained, his vision expanding. We show his recruits what real strength looks like, not just fighting against something, but standing for something greater. The bar's hidden systems hummed with purpose as they began planning the operation. But this wouldn't be like their military missions of the past. Success wouldn't be measured in targets eliminated or objectives secured. We go in light, Mike outlined, drawing on decades of experience. Small teams, non-lethal approaches. Our goal isn't to destroy Kane's operation, but to offer his people a choice. They're highly trained operators, Wright cautioned. They won't be easily convinced. Then we show them what we've built here. Mike gestured around the Blue Agave. Not just a bar, but a symbol of what's possible when we choose to protect, instead of destroy. Captain Vargas's radio crackled with new intelligence. Kane's forces are moving, multiple teams deploying across Central and South America. He's starting his endgame, Isabella analyzed, tracking the movements, creating chaos, destabilizing regions. Giving us our opening, Mike finished, because every operator he sends out is another chance to show them a different path. Dr. Chen held up medical files. I have colleagues ready, trauma specialists, counselors, everyone needed to help them transition back. And I have safe houses prepared, Captain Vargas added. Legitimate businesses ready to provide cover and employment. The morning sun climbed higher as their plans took shape. This wouldn't be a battle of bullets and bombs, but of hearts and minds. Each operator they turned would become not just an ally, but a testament to the power of choosing a different way. Kane thinks he's building an army to reshape the world, Mike said quietly, his voice carrying absolute conviction. We show them they can rebuild it instead, make it better without destroying what makes it worth saving. The bar's staff moved around them, each one a living example of that philosophy. Former operators who'd found new purpose, not in violence, but in protecting others' chance to find peace. It won't be easy, Wright warned. These people are like we were, trained to see everything as a tactical problem, every situation as a potential threat. Then we show them what we learned, Mike replied, that the hardest battles aren't won with weapons, but with wisdom. That true strength isn't in how many you can defeat, but in how many you can help stand up. Isabella's computers chimed with new intel. First team confirmed departing Colombia, heading north, likely through cartel territories. Mike nodded, pieces falling into place. Then that's where we start. Not with an ambush, but with an invitation. We show them what we've built here, let them see for themselves there's another way. The bar's morning light caught the subtle security measures, the defensive preparations. But now they served a different purpose. Not just protection, but proof that strength could be used to guard rather than destroy. Send the word through our network, Mike instructed. Every facility goes to alert status, not to repel attacks, but to welcome potential allies. Every operator Kane sends becomes an opportunity to grow our family. Because that's what they were building, not just a resistance or a counterforce, but a family of warriors who'd found a better way, each one carrying their own story of redemption, each one proof that it's never too late to choose a different path. As the Blue Agave prepared for another day of serving both drinks and hope, Mike Sullivan understood that their greatest weapon wouldn't be tactics or technology, but truth. The truth that every operator, no matter how lost in darkness, carried within them a spark of light waiting to be rekindled. And in Puerto Vallarta, as the sun reached its zenith, that truth began to spread. Not through violence or force, but through the quiet power of showing there was always another choice, always a path back to what made them heroes in the first place. Because some revolutions aren't won with bullets, but with belief, not in destroying what's broken, but in building something better. And in the Blue Agave, that revolution was serving hope one soul at a time, turning warriors into guardians, and showing that the greatest victories come not from fighting against darkness, but from lighting the way for others to find their way home. The first of Kane's teams arrived at sunset, their approach so subtle that only years of operational experience allowed Mike to spot them. 3 operators, moving with the liquid grace that marked Tier 1 professionals, took positions around the Blue Agave with textbook precision. Contact, multiple angles, Wright murmured, his trained eye catching the same details. They're good. They're family, Mike corrected quietly, continuing to mix drinks with practiced ease. Just lost right now. Through the bar's sophisticated surveillance system, He watched the team's methodical advance. Their movement patterns were familiar, techniques he'd helped develop during his years running ghost operations. But there was something else, a hesitation in their approach that spoke of internal conflict. "Isabella," Mike called softly. "Protocol Lighthouse." She nodded, initiating a sequence that would subtly alter the bar's external lighting. Not the defensive measures they'd used against Ortiz, but something more profound. Light patterns, designed to trigger specific psychological responses, to remind operators of their original purpose. The first team member entered casually, taking a seat at the bar. Female, mid-30s, her posture revealing advanced close-quarters training. Mike recognized her immediately from intelligence briefings. Sarah Connor, former Navy SEAL, reported. "Killed in action 2 years ago." "Impressive setup," she commented professionally, eyes scanning entry points. "Though the UV reactive paint on the support columns is an interesting choice." "Helps create atmosphere," Mike replied, setting a perfect Manhattan in front of her without being asked, her documented preferred drink. "Among other things." Her eyebrow raised slightly at the drink choice, but she didn't reach for it. "You've been expecting us." "I've been waiting for you," Mike corrected. "There's a difference." The second operator entered through the beach access. David Chen, Army Special Forces, another deceased warrior now working for Kane. He moved with predatory grace, but Mike noted the slight tremor in his left hand, the toll of operating, against his conscience. "The pathways outside," Chen observed, taking position near the windows. "They're laid out in advanced urban combat patterns." "Makes it easier for guests to find their way," Mike replied, starting Chen's documented favorite, a classic old-fashioned, especially those who might be lost. The third operator remained outside, maintaining overwatch, but Mike could feel the weight of their attention through the windows. Maria Ramirez, Marine Force Recon, reportedly killed in Syria. 3 of the best operators in the world, all supposedly dead. All now serving a man who'd twisted their skills toward chaos. "Kane sends his regards," Connor said smoothly, still not touching her drink. "He's very interested in what you're building here." "What we're building," Mike emphasized, his hands steady as he worked. "Not just me. Everyone who's found there, way back to what matters." Chen's voice carried carefully controlled tension. "And what exactly is that, Commander? Peace? Redemption? Pretty words for hiding from what needs to be done." "Not hiding," Wright spoke up from his position near the door. "Choosing like I did, like we all did." Connor's eyes narrowed slightly. "James Wright, Kane said you'd gone soft, chosen comfort over purpose." "I chose family," Wright corrected. "Real purpose, not the lies Kane feeds you about necessary evils and acceptable losses." Dr. Chen emerged from his office, carrying his medical bag with deliberate casualness. "The tremor in your hand," he addressed David Chen directly, "it's not just physical, is it? The cognitive dissonance of operating against your principles creates subtle neurological manifestations." Chen's hand stilled consciously, but the doctor's words had struck home. "You don't understand what we're trying to achieve." "A better world through controlled chaos," Mike supplied, his voice gentle with understanding. "Break down the corrupt systems, let something new rise from the ashes. Kane's favorite doctrine." "The system is broken," Connor insisted, though something flickered in her eyes. "Someone has to take action." "Like we did?" Captain Vargas asked, entering with precise timing. "Look around you. This isn't just a bar. It's proof that there's another way to create change." Isabella's computers hummed softly as she pulled up specific files. Sarah Connor, she read. Distinguished service record, 3 Purple Hearts, known for prioritizing civilian protection during operations, even at tactical disadvantage. Connor's composure cracked slightly. That was before I understood what really needs to be done. Before Kane showed you selected intelligence, Mike corrected. Carefully curated evidence to support his narrative, but you've seen things that don't fit, haven't you? Operations that went beyond necessary force, civilian casualties dismissed as acceptable losses. Chen shifted uncomfortably. Sometimes. Hard choices have to be made. No. Mike's voice carried absolute conviction. Hard choices have to be faced. The real strength isn't in choosing the easy path of destruction, but the harder road of protection. Through the windows, they could see Ramirez adjusting her position, unconsciously moving closer to hear the conversation. Mike's voice carried, clearly meant for all 3 operators. Kane offered you purpose, he continued, a chance to use your skills to reshape the world. But look around this room. Every person here had the same choice, to break what's broken or to protect what's worth saving. Dr. Chen opened his medical bag, removing not weapons, but files. Complete psychological profiles of operators who found their way back. Men and women just like you, who realize that true strength lies in protection, not destruction. Your operations in Guatemala, Isabella added, displaying tactical data. The school you chose not to destroy, claiming strategic uncertainty. The hospital you warned before the strike. Small choices, but they reveal your true nature. Connor's hand trembled slightly as she finally reached for her drink. We have our orders, our mission. You have a choice, Mike corrected gently. The same choice every person in this room made, to remember why you first put on the uniform, why you chose to serve. Wright stepped forward, his presence a testament to that very choice. Kane thinks he's offering you purpose, but he's really stealing your soul. I know. I've been where you are. Outside, Ramirez had moved to the door, drawn by the weight of truth in their words. Mike continued preparing drinks, each motion deliberate and precise, just as he'd trained these operators to be. You're not here to attack us, he said with quiet certainty. You're here because something in you recognizes that Kane's path leads to darkness. That's why you hesitated in Guatemala, why you've been making small choices to minimize civilian casualties. What are you offering? Ramirez spoke for the first time, her voice carrying years of suppressed conflict. Another way to hide from what needs to be done? A way to do what really needs to be done, Mike replied. To protect, to serve, to remember that our greatest strength isn't in our ability to destroy, but in our choice to defend. The bar's subtle lighting shifted again, highlighting the photos on the walls, operators who'd found their way back, communities they'd helped protect, lives they'd helped rebuild. Look around you. Mike gestured to his staff, each one a former operator who'd chosen a different path. Every person here understands what you're feeling, the weight of compromise, the toll of operating against your conscience. But we also understand something else, Wright added, that it's never too late to remember who you really are. Never too late to choose a different way. The tension in the room crystallized as 3 of the world's deadliest operators faced the hardest choice of their careers, to continue down Kane's path of destruction, or to remember the principles that had first made them heroes. Because some battles aren't won with weapons or tactics, but with truth. And in the Blue Agave, as the sun set over Puerto Vallarta, that truth began to shine brighter than any tactical advantage ever could. The light of redemption, of remembering, of choosing to stand for something greater than revenge or revolution. The light of coming home to who you really are and finding family waiting to help you rebuild. Connor's hand tightened around her untouched Manhattan, her tactical training warring with deeper instincts. Even if we believe you, Kane has contingencies. Dead man switches if we don't check in. Your families, Mike finished quietly, in protective custody at Kane's compound. That's his real leverage, isn't it? Chen's composure cracked slightly. My daughter. He said it was for her safety, to protect her from those who'd use her against me. While he uses her against you instead, Wright's voice carried understanding rather than judgment. Just like he tried with Emily. Isabella's fingers flew across her keyboard, pulling up satellite imagery. Kane's compound in Colombia, heavily fortified, multiple security layers, but not impenetrable. Especially not to the people who helped design its protocols, Mike added, his eyes meeting Connor's. You've been looking for weaknesses, haven't you? Every time you're there for training or debriefing. The female operator's silence was answer enough. Ramirez moved fully inside now, letting the door close behind her. There are 26 families being held there. Children, spouses, parents, anyone Kane could use as leverage. And an army of compromised operators ready to defend it, Chen added, but his voice carried a note of hope he couldn't quite suppress. Even if we wanted to help, the tactical challenges are significant but not insurmountable, Captain Vargas interrupted, spreading detailed plans across the bar, especially with inside knowledge and the right resources. Dr. Chen opened another file on his tablet. We've been developing specialized non-lethal options, ways to neutralize opposition, without harming our own people. Mike continued mixing drinks with practiced ease, each motion precise and measured. Kane thinks he's created the perfect trap, using family against operators, operators against each other, but he forgot something important. What's that? Connor asked, finally taking a sip of her Manhattan. That family isn't just about blood or leverage, Mike replied. It's about choice, about standing together for something worth protecting. Wright nodded in understanding. Kane's using their families to control them, but those families could be his greatest weakness. Because every person being held there represents someone else who might choose to stand with us, Isabella confirmed, displaying profiles of other compromised operators. We've already made contact with 12 families on the inside, building a network. A network? Chen's tactical mind engaged despite his reservations. Of what? Hope, Mike said simply. People ready to choose a different path. Parents teaching their children about real strength, about standing for what's right, even when it's hard. Captain Vargas added fresh intelligence to the growing pile of data. We've been preparing for this. Safe houses, new identities, legitimate, businesses ready to provide cover and support. Not just escape, Wright emphasized, but a real chance to rebuild, to use our skills to protect instead of destroy. The three operators exchanged loaded glances, years of training and shared experience allowing them to communicate volumes in silence. Finally, Connor spoke. Even if we help, there are others, operators who truly believe in Kane's vision, who aren't just being coerced. Then we show them what we show everyone who comes through those doors. Mike gestured around the Blue Agave. That there's always another choice, always a way back to the light. Dr. Chen stepped forward, his medical expertise lending weight to his words. The psychological toll of operating against your conscience. It creates fractures, small doubts that grow into questions that can't be ignored. Like why Cain's vision of a better world requires so much collateral damage, Ramirez said softly. Why his path to peace leaves so much destruction in its wake. Isabella's computers hummed as she compiled new data. We've identified patterns in recent operations. Missions where objectives were technically met, but with minimal civilian impact. Small choices made by operators starting to remember who they really are. No choices you've been making. Mike addressed all three operators directly. Every time you find a way to complete the mission without unnecessary casualties. Every time you choose protection over destruction. Chen's hand had stopped trembling, purpose replacing uncertainty. What's your plan? Instead of answering directly, Mike began preparing 3 new drinks. Not their usual preferences, but something different, something symbolic. In special operations, we learned that the best plans are often the simplest, he began, his movements precise and measured, not because they're easy, but because they're built on fundamental truths. The drinks he set, before them, were clear as water but caught the light like diamonds. First truth, family is stronger than fear. Cain uses loved ones as leverage, but those same families can become our greatest strength. Wright picked up the thread. Second truth, every operator, no matter how compromised, carries within them the core principles that first made them. Choose to serve. Those principles can be reawakened. Third truth, Captain Vargas added, the most effective revolution isn't one of destruction, but of transformation. Not breaking what's broken, but building something better. Mike gestured to the drinks before them. These aren't just beverages, they're choices. Clear as the difference between right and wrong, bright as the path back to who you really are. Connor lifted her glass, studying its contents. And if we make this choice, if we stand with you, then you become part of something greater, Mike replied. Not just a resistance or a counterforce, but a family, a community of warriors who remember that true strength lies in protection, not destruction. The bar's subtle lighting shifted again, revealing new details in the UV reactive paint, not just tactical positions, but words hidden in elegant script. Honor, courage, commitment, the core values that had first led them to serve. Cain thinks he's building an army, Mike continued, his voice carrying absolute conviction. We're building something stronger, a family of warriors who choose to stand for something worth protecting. As the 3 operators considered their choices, the Blue Agave seemed to hold its breath. This wasn't just about recruiting assets or gaining tactical advantages. It was about souls finding their way home, warriors remembering their true purpose. Because some revolutions aren't won with weapons or tactics, but with truth. The truth that every person, no matter how far they've strayed, carries within them the light of their original purpose. The truth that real strength isn't in how much you can destroy, but in what you choose to protect. And in Puerto Vallarta, as night settled over the Blue Agave, that truth began to shine brighter than any tactical advantage or strategic position. The truth that family, real family, isn't built on leverage or fear, but on the choice to stand together for something worth believing in. Connor raised her glass, the crystal catching light like captured hope. "To remembering who we are," she said softly, and drank. Chen and Ramirez followed suit, the simple act carrying the weight of a sacred oath. "Kane expects us to report back within the hour," Ramirez noted, checking her tactical watch. "He'll know something's wrong if we don't maintain protocol." Mike's hands moved with practiced efficiency, preparing a fresh round of drinks. "Then we give him exactly what he expects, a detailed report about the notorious Commander Sullivan's bar operation. Everything except what really matters." Isabella's fingers danced across her keyboard, pulling up detailed templates. "We've prepared convincing reconnaissance data, enough truth to be believable, carefully crafted to hide what's really happening here. A ghost operation within a ghost operation." Wright nodded approvingly. "Just like the old days, but this time for something worth protecting." Dr. Chen spread new files across the bar, medical records, psychological profiles, detailed analyses. "These are our latest assessments of the families being held at Kane's compound. Many of them are showing signs of psychological resistance, small acts of defiance." "Seeds of revolution," Captain Vargas observed, "but not the kind Kane expects. People choosing hope over fear, protection over destruction." The bar's sophisticated surveillance systems tracked movement outside. Regular patrols, local police, tourists enjoying the evening. Everything normal on the surface, while beneath it all, a new kind of operation was taking shape. "Each family. We free," Mike explained, gesturing to detailed plans, "becomes not just rescued civilians, but active participants in their own liberation. Parents teaching children about real strength, spouses supporting each other in choosing what's right." Connor studied the tactical layouts with professional appreciation. "You're not just planning a rescue operation, you're building a movement." "A revolution of the heart," Mike confirmed. "Because that's what Kane doesn't understand. You can't force people to fight for something they don't believe in, not in the long run." Chen's tactical mind engaged fully now, seeing beyond mere strategy to something deeper. The compounds. Security isn't just about keeping people in, it's about keeping truth out. Truth has a way of finding its way through the smallest cracks, Wright agreed. "Like the way you three have been making those small choices, protecting civilians, even while following Kane's orders." Isabella brought up new satellite imagery, showing recent changes to the compound's layout. "He's been expanding the facilities, bringing in more families, more operators. But that growth creates vulnerabilities. Not just physical ones," Dr. Chen added, "psychological pressure points. The more people he tries to control through fear, the more opportunities for hope to take root." Mike began outlining their approach, each detail carefully considered. "We start with what Kane expects, regular reports, normal operations. But every mission becomes an opportunity to plant seeds, to show others there's another way. A network within the network," Ramirez understood, "using the same shadows Kane loves to hide in, but for something better." Captain Vargas added, "Her own intelligence to the growing operation. Local law enforcement in 3 countries is already quietly cooperating. They've seen what we're building here, how it's changing lives, because that's what really matters," Mike emphasized, "not just freeing people from Kane's control, but showing them a better way to use their skills, their strength." The bars. Subtle lighting shifted again, highlighting photos on the walls. Not just operators who'd found their way back, but families reunited, communities protected, lives transformed. Each person in these photos, Mike gestured to the wall, represents not just a tactical victory, but a soul remembering its true purpose. Warriors choosing to protect rather than destroy, to build rather than break. Connor's professional detachment cracked slightly as she studied the images. Some of these operators, we thought they'd been eliminated for betraying Kane. They found their way home, Wright corrected gently. Just like you're doing now, just like others will when they see what's possible. The night deepened. Around the Blue Agave, but inside, something bright was taking shape. Not just a plan or an operation, but a revival of purpose, a remembering of what truly matters. Kane thinks he's creating a new world order, Mike said quietly, his voice carrying absolute conviction. But you can't build a better world through fear and destruction. You build it through choice, through protection, through remembering why we first chose to serve. The three operators, among the most lethal warriors ever trained, found themselves facing not just a tactical decision, but a resurrection of their original purpose. The purpose that had first led them to put on a uniform, to stand for something greater than themselves, because some wars aren't won with weapons or tactics, but with truth. The truth that every person, no matter how lost in darkness, carries within them a light waiting to be rekindled. The truth that real strength isn't in what you can destroy, but in what you choose to protect. And in Puerto Vallarta, as the Blue Agave prepared for its greatest operation, that truth began to spread like dawn breaking over the ocean, not through violence or force, but through the quiet power of choosing love over fear, protection over destruction, hope over despair. For in the end, the greatest revolution isn't one that tears down the old, but one that builds something better. Not through the power of fear, but through the strength of family, real family, chosen family, standing together for something worth believing in. And as night settled over the Costa, Mike Sullivan watched his family grow stronger, knowing that each soul finding its way back to the light was another victory in the only war that really mattered, the war for the heart of humanity itself. The first phase of their operation began at dawn, not with violence or tactical strikes, but with something far more powerful. Truth spreading through carefully cultivated channels. Mike watched the sunrise from the Blue Agave's deck as Isabella's network hummed with encrypted communications. First messages are reaching the compound, she reported, monitoring multiple data streams. Families receiving coded signals through seemingly innocent channels. Children's homework assignments, social media posts, even local radio advertisements. Wright studied the incoming responses, his experienced eye catching subtle patterns. They're responding more than we expected. The seeds we planted are already growing. Hope has a way of spreading, Mike replied, watching container ships move across the distant horizon, especially when people realize they're not alone in choosing it. Connor emerged from the secure communications room, her face showing cautious optimism. 3 more operators made contact overnight. They've been looking for a way out, just waiting for proof it was possible. Kane's getting nervous, Chen added, reviewing intelligence reports. Security protocols are tightening, but in predictable ways. He's falling back on standard counterintelligence measures. Because he still thinks like a tactical commander, Mike observed, his hands moving with practiced ease as he prepared. The bar for another day. He sees everything as a military problem to be solved. Dr. Chen arrived with fresh psychological assessments. The families in the compound are showing increasing signs of resistance. Small things. children asking questions about right and wrong, spouses supporting each other in tiny acts of defiance. The human spirit, Captain Vargas noted, is harder to imprison than the human body. Ramirez, who had spent the night coordinating with their growing network, joined them with new intelligence. Kane's inner circle is starting to fracture. Questions about unnecessary civilian casualties, about the true cost of his necessary evils. The morning light strengthened, catching the subtle security measures that made the Blue Agave more than just a bar. But now these defenses served a different purpose, not just protection, but proof that strength could be used to guard rather than destroy. Phase 2 begins tonight, Mike outlined, his voice carrying quiet authority. Not an assault, but an awakening. We show them what real strength looks like. Isabella's computers displayed multiple tactical overlays. Our network is in position. Medical teams, support staff, safe houses, everything ready to receive families choosing to break free. "And the operators?" Wright asked, though he already knew the answer. "They'll come," Mike replied with certainty. "Not because we force them, but because we remind them of who they really are." The bar's morning preparation continued around them, each staff member moving with purpose that went beyond simple business. They weren't just serving drinks anymore, they were serving hope, one soul at a time. "Kane will realize what's happening," Connor cautioned, her tactical mind identifying potential complications. "He'll try to stop it." "Let him try," Mike's voice carried absolute conviction, "because every move he makes to tighten control just shows his people the difference between leadership and tyranny." Dr. Chen spread new files across the bar, psychological profiles, family assessments, support protocols. "We're not just offering escape, we're offering healing, a chance to rebuild what fear and manipulation have damaged." Captain Vargas added her own intelligence. "Local authorities are quietly on board. They've seen what we're building here, how it changes communities for the better." The morning sun climbed higher as their plans took final shape. This wouldn't be a battle of bullets and bombs, but of hearts remembering their true purpose, of souls finding their way back to light. "Each person who chooses to stand with us," Mike explained, "becomes not just an ally, but a beacon for others, living proof that there's always another way." The bar's sophisticated surveillance systems tracked movement outside, regular. Patrols, early tourists, local vendors setting up for the day. Everything normal on the surface, while beneath it all, a revolution of the heart was taking shape. "Kane thinks he's fighting a tactical battle," Wright observed, watching the patterns of daily life unfold. "He doesn't understand he's already lost the only war that matters, the war for the soul," Mike agreed softly, "because you can force people to obey, but you can't force them to believe. That has to come from within." Isabella's network continued to pulse with encrypted hope. Messages passing between families, operators sharing moments of doubt, people beginning to remember who they really were beneath the layers of fear and manipulation. "It's like watching a sunrise," Dr. Chen mused, studying the psychological data. "Each small choice to resist, to remember, adding light to the growing dawn. Because that's what we're really building here." Mike gestured around the Blue Agave. "Not just a safe house or a resistance, but a reminder of what's possible when we choose to stand for something worth protecting." The morning deepened, bringing with it the usual mix of tourists and locals, each one unaware they were walking through more than just a bar. They were walking through living proof that hope could triumph over fear, that protection was stronger than destruction. Tonight, Mike outlined their next steps, we show Kane's people what real strength looks like, not through force or violence, but through the power of choice. The bar's subtle security measures hummed with purpose, ready not just to defend, but to welcome. Ready to show everyone who entered that there was always another path, always a way back to the light, because some victories aren't won with weapons or tactics, but with truth. The truth that every person, no matter how lost in darkness, carries within them a spark of their original purpose. The truth that real strength isn't in what you can destroy, but in what you choose to protect. And in Puerto Vallarta, as the Blue Agave prepared for its greatest mission, that truth began to spread like light across the water, not through violence or force, but through the quiet power of choosing love over fear, protection over destruction, hope over despair. For in the end, the greatest revolution isn't one that tears down the old, but one that builds something better. Not through the power of fear, but through the strength of family, real family, chosen family, standing together for something worth believing in. Each soul finding its way back to the light was another victory in the only war that really mattered, the war for the heart of humanity itself. And as the sun climbed higher over the costa, Mike Sullivan watched his family grow stronger, knowing that every small choice to remember, to protect, to love, was another step toward the dawn they were all fighting for. Because some legends aren't built on violence or vengeance, but on the courage to stand for something greater. The courage to remember that even in the darkest night, there's always a path back to the light. And sometimes that path leads through a beachfront bar where hope is served alongside healing, one soul at a time. The first warning came as a subtle shift in the evening air, a change in pressure that only years of operational experience could detect. Mike's hands never paused in their practiced rhythm of mixing drinks, but his mind registered multiple tactical signals. "He's here," Isabella announced quietly, her surveillance network detecting new patterns. Kane's personal helicopter just landed at the private airstrip outside town. "Right on schedule," Mike replied, his voice carrying calm certainty. He couldn't resist coming to see for himself. Through the bar's sophisticated security systems, they watched Kane's convoy approach. 3 black SUVs moving with military precision through the tourist traffic. But something was different about their formation. "They're not running tactical protocols," Wright observed, noting the unusual patterns. "This isn't an assault team." "No," Mike agreed, setting up a row of specialty glasses. "He's coming to negotiate. Which means he's finally starting to understand what he's really up against." Dr. Chen emerged from his office carrying fresh intelligence. "Compound reports confirm it. 16 more families have activated their escape protocols. Kane's control is slipping faster than he can contain it." "Because fear has a weakness," Connor added, her position near the windows allowing perfect coverage of both approaches. "Once people stop being afraid, it loses all its power." The evening sun painted Puerto Vallarta in shades of gold and shadow as Kane's vehicles pulled up outside the Blue Agave. Mike watched through the bar's windows as his former superior emerged, Marcus Kane, the man who had turned the world's best operators into unwilling weapons. "He's alone," Ramirez reported through their tactical network, support teams maintaining perimeter positions only. Kane entered with measured steps, his expensive suit and confident bearing masking the tension evident to trained observers. His eyes swept the bar with professional appreciation, noting the subtle security measures, the strategic positioning, the carefully crafted atmosphere of normalcy. "You've built something impressive here, Michael," Kane said by way of greeting, taking a seat at the bar. "Though I admit I didn't expect this particular approach to revolution." Mike continued preparing drinks with practiced ease. "That's because you still think revolution only comes through destruction. You forgot what we're really fighting for." "A better world," Kane replied, his voice carrying genuine conviction. "A world where the strongest are free to make the hard choices necessary for real change." "No," Mike corrected gently, setting a perfect Manhattan in front of his former commander. "A world worth protecting, worth saving, worth believing in." Kane studied the drink thoughtfully. "Is that what you think you're doing here? Saving the world one cocktail at a time?" "One choice at a time," Mike responded. "One soul remembering its true purpose. One warrior choosing protection over destruction." The bar's subtle lighting shifted, revealing the photos on the walls. Operators who had found their way back, families reunited, communities transformed. Kane's eyes tracked each image, his tactical mind processing new patterns. "They're choosing to stand with us," Wright added, moving to join them. "Not because we force them, but because we remind them of who they really are." Kane's smile held an edge of respect. "You always were the best at psychological warfare, Michael, but you're fighting against the inevitable. The world needs structure, control, guidance. The world needs guardians," Mike corrected. "Warriors who remember why they first chose to serve. Leaders who understand that real strength lies in protection, not destruction." Isabella's computers hummed with new data. More families activating escape protocols. More operators choosing to remember their original purpose. Kane's empire wasn't being destroyed. It was being transformed, one heart at a time. "Your compound is emptying," Mike continued softly, "not through force or violence, but through choice. Your operators are remembering who they really are, what they really stand for." Kane's composure cracked slightly. "They're abandoning their duty, their mission. They're rediscovering their true mission," Connor interrupted, her presence a testament to that very choice. "The one that first made us put on the uniform, the one you made us forget." The evening deepened around them as Kane processed the full scope of what was happening. His carefully constructed network of control wasn't being dismantled. It was being reborn as something greater. "Look around you, Marcus," Mike gestured to his staff, each one a former operator who had found their way back to the light. "Every person here understands the weight you carry, the choices you've made, but they also understand something else." "What's that?" Kane asked, though his voice suggested he already knew. "That it's never too late to remember who you really are," Mike replied. "Never too late to choose a different path. To stand for something worth protecting instead of destroying." The bar's sophisticated surveillance systems tracked movement outside, families arriving at safe houses, operators choosing new paths, a network of hope spreading like dawn across the darkness. "Your revolution is failing," Kane observed, but his voice carried a note of uncertainty. "No," Mike corrected gently. "It's succeeding in ways you never imagined, not through fear or control, but through the one force you never counted on, love." Kane's tactical mind engaged with the new paradigm, love That's your secret weapon. Love of family, Mike explained. Love of purpose. Love of what we're really fighting for. Not a perfect world, but one worth protecting, worth saving, worth believing in. The night air carried the sound of helicopters. Not attack forces, but medical evacuation teams bringing families to safety. Kane's empire wasn't being destroyed by violence. It was being transformed by choice. They're all making the same choice, Mike continued. The choice to remember who they really are. The choice to stand for something greater than fear or control. Kane's hand tightened on his untouched Manhattan. And what choice are you offering me? The same choice we offer everyone who walks through those doors, Mike replied. The chance to remember who you really are beneath the weight of all your choices. The chance to stand for something worth protecting instead of destroying. Because some victories aren't won with weapons or tactics, but with truth. The truth that every person, no matter how lost in darkness, carries within them a spark of their original purpose. The truth that real strength isn't in what you can destroy, but in what you choose to protect. And in Puerto Vallarta, as the Blue Agave served its greatest purpose, that truth began to shine brighter than any tactical advantage or strategic position. The truth that family, real family, isn't built on control or fear, but on the choice to stand together for something worth believing in. For in the end, the greatest revolution isn't one that tears down the old, but one that builds something better, not through the power of fear, but through the strength of love, love of purpose, love of family, love of what makes us truly human. And as night settled over the Costa, Mike Sullivan watched another soul face its moment of choice, knowing that every heart finding its way back to the light was another victory in the only war that really mattered, the war for the very soul of humanity itself. Kane stared at his untouched Manhattan, decades of tactical calculation warring with deeper truths he'd long suppressed. "You make it sound so simple," he said finally. "Just choose love over fear, protection over control." "The simplest choices are often the hardest," Mike replied, his hands steady as he polished a glass, "because they force us to face who we really are." The bar's evening atmosphere continued around them, tourists enjoying drinks, locals sharing stories, all unaware they were witnessing a pivotal moment in a shadow war for humanity's soul. "Your compound is empty now," Isabella reported quietly, her screens showing real-time data. "The last families are reaching safe houses. Every operator has made their choice." Kane's empire hadn't been destroyed. It had been transformed, rebuilt into something stronger through the power of choice rather than control. 20 years, Kane murmured, finally reaching for his drink. 20 years, building something I thought would change the world. And you dismantled it with cocktails and conversation. "Not dismantled," Mike corrected gently. "Transformed." Every person who walked through those doors carried within them the memory of who they really were. We just helped them remember. Through the windows, they could see more former operators arriving, not as enemies or assets, but as family finding their way home. Each one carrying their own story of remembering, of choosing, of returning to their true purpose. "The thing about control," Wright added, joining them at the bar, "is that it's an illusion. Real power comes from choice, from people choosing to stand together for something worth believing in." Dr. Chen emerged from his office with fresh reports. "The psychological transformations are remarkable. Families healing, operators rediscovering their core values, communities being rebuilt. Because that's what we're really fighting for, Mike said softly. Not a perfect world, but one worth protecting, worth saving, worth believing in. Kane's tactical mind engaged with the new paradigm, analyzing patterns and possibilities. And what happens now to all these operators, these families? They build something new, Connor replied, her presence a testament to that very process. Something stronger than fear or control could ever create. The evening deepened as more stories of transformation reached them. Operators using their skills to protect instead of destroy. Families healing from years of fear. Communities discovering the strength that comes from standing together. Your training centers, Kane observed, his voice carrying complex emotions. They're being converted into rehabilitation facilities, Mike confirmed. Places where others can find their way back to the light, where skills once used for destruction can be redirected toward protection. Isabella's networks hummed with activity, new safe houses being established, support systems expanding, a web of hope spreading across continents. It's not just about escape, Mike continued. It's about transformation, about remembering that every skill, every capability can be used for something greater than fear or control. Kane's hand tightened slightly on his glass. And what about those of us who can't go back, who've gone too far to remember who we were? No one's gone too far, Mike replied with quiet certainty. That's what this place proves every day. There's always a path back to the light, always a chance to choose differently. The bar's subtle security measures hummed with purpose, but now they served a different mission. Not just protection, but welcome. A reminder that strength could be used to guard rather than destroy. Look around you, Marcus, Mike gestured. To his staff, each one a living testament to transformation. Every person here understands the weight of choices, the burden of past actions, but they also understand something else. What's that? Kane asked, though his voice suggested he already knew. That redemption isn't about erasing the past, Mike explained. It's about choosing a different future, about using everything we've learned, everything we've become, to protect instead of destroy. Through the windows, they could see the sun setting over Puerto Vallarta, painting the sky in shades of possibility. Kane's empire hadn't been defeated. It had been reborn as something greater. Your network, Kane said thoughtfully. It's not just about saving operators and families, is it? No, Mike confirmed. It's about showing the world what's possible when we choose love over fear, protection over control, when we remember who we really are and what we're really fighting for. The night air carried sounds of life and laughter, families reuniting, operators finding new purpose, communities discovering the strength that comes from standing together. We're not asking you to forget who you are, Mike continued softly. We're inviting you to remember who you were meant to be, the leader who inspired loyalty through example, not fear. The commander who understood that real strength lies in protection, not destruction. Kane's tactical mind processed the new possibilities, analyzing not weaknesses to exploit, but opportunities to rebuild. And if I choose this path, if I stand with you, then you become part of something greater, Mike replied. Not just a resistance or a movement, but a family. A community of warriors who remember that our greatest strength lies not in what we can destroy, but in what we choose to protect. Because some victories aren't won through force or tactics, but through the power of choice, the choice to remember who we really are beneath the weight of all our decisions, the choice to stand for something greater than fear or control. And in Puerto Vallarta, as the Blue Agave served its true purpose, that choice began to spread like light across the darkness. Not through violence or force, but through the quiet power of remembering what makes us truly human. For in the end, the greatest revolution isn't one that tears down the old, but one that builds something better. Not through the power of fear, but through the strength of love. Love of purpose, love of family, love of what makes life worth protecting. And as night settled over the Costa, Mike Sullivan watched another soul find its way back to the light, knowing that every heart choosing love over fear was another victory in the only war that really mattered, the war for humanity's very soul. 1 year after Cain's transformation, the Blue Agave had evolved into something far greater than just a bar. Mike stood behind the counter, watching the morning sun paint the ocean in shades of promise as his expanded family prepared for another day of serving both drinks and hope. Latest reports from the Colombia facility, Isabella announced, her surveillance network now monitoring rehabilitation centers instead of combat operations. 3 more operators completed their transition program. They're ready to join the protection teams. And their families? Mike asked, though he already knew the answer. Thriving, Wright replied, entering with fresh intelligence. The children's education program is showing remarkable results. They're learning about real strength, about using skills to protect rather than destroy. The bar's sophisticated security systems had been replicated across their network of facilities. But now they served a different purpose, not just defense, but demonstration, proof that capability could be directed toward protection rather than destruction. Cain's doing well with the new training programs, Connor reported, joining them with her morning coffee. His experience in psychological operations is proving invaluable in helping others find their way back. Dr. Chen emerged from his expanded medical facility, now occupying the building's entire second floor. The healing metrics are extraordinary. Not just physical recovery, but psychological restoration. People remembering who they really are. Mike's hands moved with practiced precision as he prepared the bar for another day. Each motion now carried additional meaning, not just serving drinks, but serving hope to those still finding their way home. 4 new locations opening this month, Captain Vargas added, reviewing expansion plans, each one a beacon for those looking to remember their true purpose. The morning light strengthened as their extended family began arriving, former operators now using their skills to protect and guide, families healed and strengthening others, a community built on choice rather than control. Remember when this was just a bar? Ramirez mused, watching the activity. Now it's a symbol of what's possible when we choose love over fear. It was always more than a bar, Mike replied softly. It was a reminder that every soul carries within it the light of its true purpose. Sometimes we just need help remembering. Through the windows, they could see new arrivals being welcomed at their expanded facilities. Operators seeking redemption, families looking for healing, communities discovering the strength that comes from standing together. The network keeps growing, Isabella observed, her screens showing their global impact. Not just safe houses anymore, but centers of transformation, places where skills once used for destruction are being redirected toward protection. Cain himself arrived, his presence now bringing hope rather than fear. 3 more training centers have requested our program modules. They're seeing the results, understanding that real strength comes from protection, not control. The bar's subtle security measures hummed with purpose, but now they told a different story, not just of defense, but of welcome, of showing that even the most sophisticated capabilities could be used to guard rather than destroy. "You've built something extraordinary here," Cain acknowledged, watching the morning operations unfold. "Not just a resistance or a movement, but a revolution of the heart." "We all built it," Mike corrected gently. "Every person who chose to remember their true purpose, every family that chose healing over fear, every community that chose to stand together." Dr. Chen's medical teams prepared for another day of healing, not just bodies, but souls, helping people rediscover their core values, their real strength, their true purpose. "The children's programs are especially inspiring," Connor noted, watching young ones arrive for their morning activities. They're learning that strength isn't about power over others, but power to protect. Through the windows, they could see their impact on Puerto Vallarta itself, a community transformed not by force or fear, but by the power of choosing to stand together for something worth believing in. "Each person who finds their way here," Mike observed, "becomes not just another success story, but a beacon for others still searching for their path back to the light." The morning deepened as more of their extended family arrived, operators teaching protection techniques instead of combat tactics, families sharing their stories of healing, communities discovering the strength that comes from unity. "Sometimes I wonder," Cain mused, watching the activity, "what would have happened if I'd understood this sooner? That real power comes from protection, not control." "The past doesn't define us," Mike replied, his voice carrying quiet certainty. "It's our choices in the present that shape who we become." Isabella's networks hummed with purpose, not tracking threats anymore, but monitoring healing, celebrating transformations, connecting those in need with those who could help. "The ripple effects are remarkable," Wright observed. "Each person who chooses this path influences countless others, showing them what's possible when we remember who we really are." The bar's morning preparation continued, but now each action carried deeper meaning, not just serving customers, but serving hope, showing that every skill, every capability could be directed toward protection rather than destruction. "This is what we were really fighting for all along," Mike said softly, watching his family work together. "Not a perfect world, but one worth protecting, worth saving, worth believing in, because some legends don't need to stay buried in shadow. Sometimes they evolve, growing into something greater, not a story of violence and vengeance, but a tale of redemption, of remembering, of choosing to stand for something worth protecting." And in Puerto Vallarta, as the Blue Agave served its true purpose, that legend continued to grow, not through force or fear, but through the quiet power of love. Love of purpose, love of family, love of what makes us truly human. For in the end, the greatest victories aren't won on battlefields, but in hearts remembering their true purpose. And at the Blue Agave, that victory was served one soul at a time, reminding everyone who entered that it's never too late to choose differently, to remember who you really are, to find your way back to the light. The morning sun climbed higher over the costa, painting the future in shades of possibility as Mike Sullivan watched his family continue their most important mission, not fighting against darkness, but lighting the way for others to find their way home. Because some revolutions aren't about destroying what's broken, but about building something better, not through the power of fear, but through the strength of love, of choice, of standing together for something worth believing in. And in that light, the Blue Agave stood as testament to a simple truth, that every soul, no matter how lost in darkness, carries within it a spark of its original purpose. A spark that, when kindled by love and understanding, can light the way. Not just for one person, but for all those still searching for their way back to who they were meant to be. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.